In every era, some people are born whose lives become a legacy. Their stories rise from the blurred pages of time and leave an everlasting mark on the minds of humanity. But the story I'm about to tell you today is not just about one man. It is the story of an entire culture, a martial art that spread across the world through the hands of a silent master, and a personality who proved that true strength lies not in a sword, but in patience. In Foshan, a part of southern China known for its innocence, ancient culture, and thriving silk trade, a boy was born in 1893 named Ip Man. But this name was more than just a name. It was a sign of a destiny that would shake the world of martial arts. On the surface, he seemed like an ordinary person, not tall, not physically powerful, not regal in appearance. But did you know that often the greatest heroes in history appear completely ordinary? Within him resided a spirit as deep as the river, as strong as the mountains, and as sharp as fire. This spirit carried the legacy of a martial tradition that taught not just the movements of the hands and feet, but a way to live life itself. But let me tell you from the start, this story is not as simple as it seems. Ip Man's life was about to take turns that would transform him from the privileged child of a wealthy family into a beggar, and then from a beggar into the world's most famous martial arts teacher. His journey was not just about learning kung fu. It was the story of a man walking through the darkness of war and emerging into light, of a man sinking in oceans of poverty and hunger, yet always standing tall because of his passion and faith. And here is a twist you might not know. If today the world knows the name Bruce Lee, recognizes Jackie Chan, or thrills at any kung fu movie, behind all of it is the guiding hand of a quiet master named Ip Man. But this is only the beginning, because the real story is still to come. The real question is, how did an ordinary man become a legendary master? What made him so special that even 50 years after his death, people are still making movies about him? What was in him that others did not have? Let us turn the pages of time, because the story I'm about to tell you is not just about martial arts. It is the most inspiring tale of human willpower. Foshan, 1893. Picture a city full of light and life, with silk and porcelain factories, bustling markets, and the oldest traditions of Chinese culture. Amidst this prosperity stood the home of the Ip family, a wealthy and respected household successful in opium trade and real estate. Here, a small boy was born, Ip Man, who had no idea that his destiny was to preserve the world's most famous martial art. As a child, Ip Man was just an ordinary rich Chinese kid, well-dressed, well-fed, with private tutors, and a comfortable life. His parents wanted him to join the family business and carry on the family legacy, but fate had other plans. Foshan at that time was also a center of martial arts. Every street had a kung fu school, and every shopkeeper had some fighting skill. And it was here that Ip Man encountered Wing Chun, a martial art unlike any other fighting style. Wing Chun was named after a legendary female warrior, Yim Wing Chun, who had perfected this art centuries ago. This art taught that your size does not matter, your speed does not matter, only your technique and timing matter. Exactly the kind of art that was perfect for a physically average person like Ip Man. At the age of 13, while other wealthy children were busy with their toys and games, Ip Man made a decision that would change his entire life. He went to Chun, a legendary Wing Chun master who only trained a select few. People called Chun Wa the money changer because he ran a money-changing business. But in reality, he was an extremely skilled fighter. When Ip Man stood before him, Chun saw something in his eyes, a fire, a passion, and most importantly, respect. This respect was not just for martial arts, but for his culture and traditions. Chun accepted him, but with one condition. Son, this is not just about fighting. This is a way to live life. If you want to learn this, you will not just learn to fight, you will learn to live. and from here began a journey that would continue for the next 80 years. Training was far from easy. Waking up at 5 in the morning, starting with basic exercises, then practicing on the wooden dummy, followed by sparring, and finishing with philosophy lessons, every day was a test of discipline. Wing Chun did not only teach physical movements, it taught mental focus and inner strength. Chan Washun would say, "Look, son, in other martial arts, strength is met with strength. But in Wing Chun, we counterforce with technique. If someone throws a strong punch at you, you don't meet it with another strong punch. You deflect it, redirect it, and then strike accurately." This philosophy was not only for fighting, it applied to life itself. Slowly, Ip Man began to realize that Wing Chun was not just a martial art. It was a complete system for living. Every day in training, he felt himself becoming not just physically stronger, but mentally clearer. His reflexes sharpened, his focus improved, and most importantly, his confidence grew. Yet, he did not know that the real tests were still waiting ahead. In 1908, when Ip Man was 15 years old, a major incident occurred that completely changed his life. Chan Washun passed away suddenly. Ip Man was devastated. His mentor was gone, his guide no longer by his side. Yet destiny had other plans. Chan Washun's senior student, Ng Chung Sok, took Ip Man to Lung Bik. And here comes a plot twist. Who was Lung Bik? He was the son of Lung Jan, the most famous Wing Chun master of the previous generation. This meant that Ip Man now had direct access to the greatest lineage of Wing Chun. Leung Bik saw potential in Ip Man that perhaps even Ip Man himself had not recognized. He said, "You have learned the basics. Now I will teach you the advanced secrets that are only passed down to family members." For the next 3 years, Ip Man studied the deepest techniques of Wing Chun. Leung Bik taught him that Wing Chun was not just about defense or offense, it was about simultaneous attack and defense. One hand would defend while the other attacked. This concept was revolutionary for its time. In 1911, Ip Man moved to Hong Kong for higher education, marking the beginning of another important phase in his life. Compared to Foshan, Hong Kong was a modern city with strong Western influence, widespread use of the English language, and a bustling international business hub. Here, Ip Man was exposed to different cultures and various fighting styles. He realized that Wing Chun was not only highly effective compared to other Chinese martial arts, but also held its ground against international fighting techniques. At college, he won many informal fights, yet he never showed off. He always maintained a low profile because Leung Bik had taught him. A true master is not one who shows everyone how strong he is. A true master uses his strength only when it is absolutely necessary. These days in Hong Kong were a learning phase for Ip Man. He was not only perfecting his martial arts, but also gaining an understanding of the modern world. In 1916, Ip Man returned to Foshan as a 23-year-old mature young man. Both a Wing Chun master and a modern educated individual. He was welcomed in Foshan like a hero. Local martial artists challenged him, but in every challenge, Ip Man won easily. Yet these victories were not just physical, they were intellectual. He did not harm his opponents but disabled them while showing respect. This is why people respected him rather than feared him. In 1917, he married Chung Wing Sing, a beautiful and intelligent woman who held traditional Chinese values while also embracing modern thinking. Chung Wing Sing played a vital role in Ip Man's journey. She was not just a wife, but also a partner, a supporter, and at times, an advisor. Together they had 4 children, 2 sons, Ip Chun and Ip Ching, and 2 daughters. Family life grounded Ip Man further, giving him a deeper sense of responsibility. The 1920s and 1930s were the golden years for Ip Man. He was comfortably settled in Foshan, his family business was doing well, and his martial arts practice continued while he gradually invested in preserving Wing Chun. However, he was still a private teacher, not teaching publicly. He only taught Wing Chun to close friends and family members. By this time, Ip Man had mastered Wing Chun perfectly, not just the techniques, but also the philosophy, applications, and most importantly, the teaching methodology. He understood that Wing Chun had to be passed on to the next generation, or the art would be lost. But destiny had other plans for him. His comfortable life was soon to end, and his real test was about to begin. 1937 was a year that changed everything. The Second Sino-Japanese War began, and Japan launched a full-scale invasion of China. Foshan, which had been peaceful and prosperous until yesterday, overnight became a war zone. Japanese forces occupied the city, and everything changed. Ip Man's comfortable, wealthy life suddenly vanished. The Japanese shut down Chinese businesses, confiscated properties, and made Chinese people second-class citizens. Ip Man, who had been a respected, wealthy man, was now a refugee in his own city. He had to hide with his family, struggle for food, and most difficult of all, maintain his identity and dignity. The Japanese occupation was brutal. They were not just taking over land, they were trying to destroy Chinese culture and spirit. Martial arts masters were specifically targeted because they represented Chinese strength and resistance. Many masters were forced to work for the Japanese army and train their soldiers. Those who refused were tortured or killed. Ip Man also faced a difficult choice. The Japanese commander, General Miura, who was himself a skilled martial artist and an expert in Japanese arts, offered Ip Man, "I will give you good money, protect your family, all you have to do is teach my soldiers Chinese martial arts." The offer was tempting, especially when his family was starving. But Ip Man's answer was clear. "I cannot teach my art to the invaders. This is my soul, and my soul is not for sale." Because of this refusal, Ip Man and his family faced extreme hardship. They went from luxury to poverty, yet they maintained their dignity. Ip Man was tortured and threatened multiple times, but he remained steadfast in his principles. This period was the darkest phase of his life, yet it was also the time when his true character was revealed. But then an incident happened that would change Ip Man's life forever. The Japanese army organized a public demonstration where Chinese martial artists were to compete against Japanese fighters. The idea was to humiliate the Chinese, to show that Japanese fighting techniques were superior. Many Chinese fighters participated, but all were defeated. Some couldn't fight properly out of fear, while others were actually weak in technique. Ip Man was in the crowd, watching as his culture was being insulted. When the Japanese commander issued the challenge, "Is there any other Chinese fighter who can challenge our champions?" everyone fell silent. At that moment, Ip Man made a decision that would determine his entire future. He stepped forward and said, "I accept the challenge." The fight that took place that day was not just a physical combat. It was a clash of two philosophies, two cultures, two ways of life. The Japanese fighters were strong, disciplined, and aggressive. But Ip Man had something else. Technique, patience, and most importantly, he was fighting for something bigger than himself. The principle of Wing Chun is to use the opponent's force against them. The Japanese fighters threw hard strikes, but Ip Man deflected them and counterattacked. His movements were fluid, efficient, and deadly accurate. One by one, he defeated them all. The crowd, which had been silent before, now erupted in cheers. This was not just a fight. It was a symbol of resistance, a symbol that the Chinese spirit could not be crushed. But victory came at a price. The Japanese commander was furious and marked Ip Man. From then on, Ip Man and his family had to live under constant danger. They had to keep moving, hiding, and surviving day by day. Yet, after this incident, Ip Man realized that his responsibility was not limited to his family. His responsibility was to preserve his culture, to protect his martial art. After the war, in 1945, when the Japanese forces surrendered, China was free. But the destruction was massive. Foshan had completely changed. The economy had collapsed, and the social structure was disrupted. Ip Man's family business was completely destroyed. Properties gone, savings depleted. But an even bigger problem was the unstable political situation. The Chinese Civil War was raging between the communists and the nationalists. Ip Man knew that a stable life in Foshan was no longer possible. In 1949, when the Communist Party came to power, the situation became even more difficult. The new government was suspicious of martial arts masters, especially those from wealthy backgrounds. Ip Man had no choice. For the safety of his family, he had to leave his homeland. In 1949, Ip Man made the most difficult decision of his life. He decided to move to Hong Kong, but this move was meant to be temporary. The plan was to safely send his family to Hong Kong, wait for the situation to stabilize, and then return to Foshan. But destiny had other plans. At the time of his arrival in Hong Kong, Ip Man was 56 years old, almost elderly by Chinese standards. He had no job, no contacts, and no resources. The only thing he possessed was his knowledge of Wing Chun and his ability to teach it. But who in Hong Kong would be interested in Chinese martial arts? The city was modern, heavily influenced by Western culture, and young people were learning English and pursuing business. Where was the demand for traditional martial arts? The starting days were extremely difficult. Ip Man had to struggle to pay rent and to find food. The man who was once a wealthy landlord was now working as a daily wage labourer just to survive. He fell into depression, and often wondered if coming to Hong Kong had been a mistake. But one incident changed everything. Ip Man was working as a waiter in a restaurant when some local troublemakers caused a scene. The owner was scared, the customers were disturbed, and it would take time for the police to arrive. In that moment, Ip Man intervened. In just 30 seconds, without seriously hurting anyone, he neutralized all the troublemakers. The onlookers were amazed. What was this technique? Where did this speed come from? Word spread quickly that an elderly Chinese man with incredible fighting skills was working in the restaurant. Gradually, people began approaching Ip Man. At first, out of curiosity, and later with the intent to learn properly. Ip Man realized that this was his opportunity not only to preserve Wing Chun, but also to earn a living. However, teaching in Hong Kong was completely different from Foshan. In Foshan, he had been selective, teaching only close friends and family. In Hong Kong, he had to teach publicly, handle students from diverse backgrounds, and most importantly, adapt Wing Chun to fit the modern urban lifestyle. In 1950, Ip Man officially began teaching Wing Chun publicly. His initial location was a small apartment in the Kowloon area, rented with partners. At first, there were only 5 to 10 students, mostly local Chinese youth learning part-time. But Ip Man's teaching method was unique. Traditional Chinese martial arts schools were filled with formality, rituals, and strict hierarchy. Students often took years to learn the basic techniques, but Ip Man adopted a modern approach. He focused on practical applications, how to use Wing Chun in real-world situations. His students learned that Wing Chun was not just a collection of traditional forms. It was applicable in street fights, self-defense, and building confidence. Word of mouth began to spread his reputation. People started realizing that this elderly master was truly special. His teaching method was scientific. He explained the physics behind every movement, how anatomy played a role, and how psychology worked. Modern students found this approach highly appealing. In 1954, a turning point came when Ip Man acquired a proper school space at Yip Man Tong. Now he could conduct regular classes, accommodate more students, and design a systematic curriculum. The variety of students was fascinating. Some were local Hong Kong Chinese, some were refugees from mainland China, and some were foreigners interested in learning about Chinese culture. Every student had a different background and motivation, but Ip Man treated everyone with equal respect. His philosophy was that Wing Chun is universal. It is not only for Chinese people. Anyone who is sincere, dedicated, and respectful can learn Wing Chun. Ip Man was innovative in his teaching methods. In traditional schools, students would take years before starting sparring. But Ip Man introduced Chi Sao, sensitive hands training that begins at the beginner level. In Chi Sao, Two students keep their hands in contact and feel their opponent's movements, intentions, and energy. This exercise develops reflexes, sensitivity, and, most importantly, the ability to read an opponent's mind through physical contact. Students found this technique fascinating because it felt almost telepathic. Advanced students would say that they could anticipate what their opponent was going to do before the opponent even made a move. In 1957, a martial arts tournament was organized in Hong Kong, featuring masters from different styles. Ip Man encouraged his students to participate. His students delivered outstanding performances, particularly showcasing Wing Chun's close-range combat techniques. Handling traditional kung fu styles was easy for them, and even countering Western boxing and other international styles was manageable for Wing Chun practitioners. Following this success, Ip Man's name became established in the Hong Kong martial arts community. Requests started coming in for workshops, demonstrations, and collaborative training sessions. But in 1957, another important event occurred that would change Ip Man's life. A 16-year-old boy named Lee Jun-fan, whom friends called Bruce Lee, joined his school. Bruce had an interesting background. He was born in Hong Kong but heavily influenced by American culture, spoke English fluently, and had worked as a child actor in Western movies. His personality was rebellious, energetic, and he constantly challenged traditional authority. When he first met Ip Man, an instant connection was felt. Bruce had a rare spark, a natural fighting instinct, incredible speed, and most importantly, a willingness to question everything. Ip Man was initially hesitant to accept Bruce because his approach was not traditional. Bruce would say, "Master, this form practice is boring. I want to learn real fighting." Traditional students didn't ask such questions. They quietly followed the curriculum. But Ip Man had the wisdom to understand that Bruce was not an ordinary student. He had the potential to take Wing Chun to the next level. He accepted Bruce, but with one condition. You will not only learn the techniques, but also the philosophy. Wing Chun is not just fighting, it is a way of life. Bruce Lee's training period was intense. He practiced 4 to 6 hours daily, asked questions, challenged concepts, and most importantly, tried to apply Wing Chun in a modern context. Ip Man saw in Bruce that this boy did not just want to preserve Wing Chun, he wanted to evolve it. Initially this was concerning, but gradually Ip Man realized that evolution was necessary for survival. Training sessions with Bruce turned into philosophical discussions. Bruce would ask, "Master, Wing Chun is perfect for close range, but what if the opponent maintains long range?" Ip Man would reply, "Son, in a real fight, range control is in your hands. Wing Chun teaches you how to bring the opponent into your preferred range." In 1959, when Bruce turned 18, he decided to go to America for further studies. Before his departure, Ip Man gave Bruce special private sessions, sharing the advanced secrets of Wing Chun. He explained to Bruce, "In America, you will encounter different cultures and see different fighting styles. Make Wing Chun your base, but keep an open mind. If any technique is better, incorporate it. But never forget, the foundation philosophy of Wing Chun must never change." After Bruce left for America, Ip Man knew that his Wing Chun would be tested on an international level. If Bruce succeeded, the name of Wing Chun would spread worldwide. If he failed, Wing Chun's reputation could be at risk. The 1960s became a period of consolidation for Ip Man. While Bruce Lee was making a name for himself in America, Wing Chun schools were being established across Hong Kong, and Ip Man was slowly turning into a celebrity within the martial arts community. Yet, his personal life was filled with challenges. His wife, Chung Wing-sing, was still in mainland China with the family, and because of the political situation, reunion was impossible. Ip Man lived alone in Hong Kong, professionally successful, but personally isolated. This loneliness often turned into periods of depression. In the 1960s, health issues also began to surface. Due to heavy smoking, Ip Man started developing lung problems, and constant stress led to digestive troubles as well. Yet, he never complained and continued teaching. His students sometimes noticed that their master looked tired, but during training his energy remained the same. Ip Man's philosophy was clear. Personal problems should never interfere with professional responsibilities. If students came to learn, they deserved the best education no matter what struggles their master was facing privately. In 1964, Bruce Lee's demonstration at the Long Beach tournament spread the name of Wing Chun across the entire world. Bruce's iconic one-inch punch was, in reality, a practical showcase of a Wing Chun principle taught to him by Ip Man. The American martial arts community was both shocked and impressed. How could such a small movement generate such devastating power? They had never seen anything like it before. Through Bruce, Ip Man's indirect influence suddenly entered the international spotlight. In 1967, a major breakthrough came when Bruce Lee's TV series, The Green Hornet, became successful in America. Bruce publicly acknowledged that his martial arts foundation was Wing Chun and that his master was Ip Man in Hong Kong. Overnight, Ip Man became an international celebrity. Media requests started pouring in, international students began coming to Hong Kong, and Wing Chun suddenly became a worldwide phenomenon. But this fame was a mixed blessing. On the positive side, Wing Chun was preserved, it gained international recognition, and Ip Man achieved financial stability. On the negative side, traditional privacy was lost, commercial pressures increased, and maintaining authenticity became difficult. In the late 1960s, Ip Man made a major decision. He would systematically document Wing Chun so that proper records would be available for future generations. Traditional Chinese martial arts were based on oral tradition, and written records were rare. But Ip Man realized that in the modern world, documentation was essential. He began recording Wing Chun forms on film, describing techniques in detailed written form, and clearly articulating its philosophy. This project was time-consuming but necessary to maintain authenticity. In 1970, Bruce Lee returned to Hong Kong for the movie industry, leading to a father-son-like reunion with Ip Man. By then, Bruce was an international star, confident, successful, and widely admired. But he still showed deep respect before his master. They held long discussions about the evolution of Wing Chun, Bruce's new martial art, Jeet Kune Do, and the future of martial arts as a whole. Ip Man was proud of Bruce's achievements, but also concerned that Bruce might completely abandon traditional values. Bruce reassured him, "Master, I am evolving Wing Chun, not abandoning it. Your teachings will always remain my foundation." In 1971, Ip Man's health began to seriously deteriorate. He was diagnosed with throat cancer, most likely caused by his years of heavy smoking. Although doctors suggested treatment, the prognosis was not promising. Ip Man made a conscious decision to spend his remaining time meaningfully. He held intensive teaching sessions with his senior students, passing on advanced secrets and knowledge. Most importantly, he focused on creating a succession plan for Wing Chun's leadership. His greatest concern was ensuring that after his passing, Wing Chun's authenticity would be preserved, its quality maintained, and its lineage protected. During his cancer treatment, Ip Man dictated the memoir of his life, in which he described in detail his journey, the history of Wing Chun, his teaching philosophy, and his vision for the future. This memoir became an invaluable resource for Wing Chun practitioners. He also assigned different responsibilities to his senior students, entrusting some with the task of preserving the traditional forms, others with developing modern applications, and some with managing the art's international expansion. In December 1972, Ip Man's condition became critical. His family and close students gathered around him. In his final days, he was peaceful, free from pain, and content knowing that he had fulfilled his responsibilities. On December 2nd, 1972, at the age of 79, Ip Man took his last breath. His death was mourned not only in Hong Kong, but also internationally. Bruce Lee, who at that time was at the peak of his career, gave an emotional tribute to his master. Ip Man's funeral was a massive event. Thousands of people attended. Students, martial artists, celebrities, government officials, and ordinary people whose lives had been positively impacted by him. At the funeral, a Wing Chun demonstration was held as a tribute in his honor. The media coverage was extensive, and suddenly the whole world realized that a legend had passed away. After his death, Ip Man's legacy grew exponentially. Bruce Lee incorporated Wing Chun techniques into his movies, which became popular worldwide. International Wing Chun schools were established, tournaments were organized, and documentaries and films about Ip Man were produced. Most importantly, Wing Chun remained a living art, not just a museum piece. Even today, more than 50 years later, millions of people around the world practice Wing Chun, all connected to Ip Man's lineage. In modern times, Ip Man's story has been repeatedly retold through movies, books, and documentaries. Donnie Yen's Ip Man movie series introduced this legend to a new generation. But the real Ip Man was far more complex and inspiring than what the films portray. He was not just a fighter, he was a philosopher, a teacher, a cultural preservationist, and most importantly, a humble human being who never boasted about his achievements. Today, whenever someone practices Wing Chun, strikes a wooden dummy, trains in Chi Sao, or follows its philosophy, they are indirectly connected to Ip Man. His teachings are timeless because they are rooted in a deep understanding of human nature. Wing Chun is not just a martial art, it is psychology, physics, philosophy, and most importantly, a practical life skill. Every story has an ending, but some stories don't truly end, even after their conclusion. Ip Man's life was one such story, which became even more powerful after his passing. He was a boy from a wealthy family who endured the storms of war, hunger, and poverty. He was a refugee who rebuilt his life in a foreign land. He was a teacher who made a traditional art relevant in the modern world. He was a master who entrusted his legacy to his devoted students. And above all, he was a human being who proved that circumstances do not define you. Your character does. He taught us that martial arts are not just about physical combat, but about mental discipline, emotional control, and spiritual growth. He showed us that respect must be earned, not demanded by force. He showed us that true strength lies in acknowledging vulnerability, not in hiding weakness. Today, if we know the name Bruce Lee, if we enjoy Jackie Chan's movies, if we appreciate the philosophy of Kung Fu, it is all because of that quiet master who never sought the spotlight. Ip Man, the man who showed that legends are not born. They are made through consistent effort, unwavering principles, and service to something greater than themselves. And perhaps that is why, even today, when a Wing Chun student learns their first form, trains on the wooden dummy, or practices Chi Sao, somewhere in that moment, the spirit of Ip Man is present, guiding, inspiring, and watching over. Because legends never truly die, they simply transform, becoming immortal through their teachings, their students, and the values passed on from generation to generation. And Ip Man was undoubtedly such a timeless legend, whose impact will continue to be felt for centuries to come. Legends never die, they live on in those they inspire. And the same is true for another modern warrior, Kobe Bryant. Click now to watch his story.